And we're here. Not my office. Close this door. All right. Give it a couple minutes. I have my notes. The Jurassic Park shirt for the season 2, as you can see. Okay. All right. Give it a few minutes for a minute. The wild look. Yeah, the humidity has got it going. It was we were better off this morning, guys. But okay. Let me get started. So it's been a while. Want to apologize for that. Trying to get a handle on things post-election. It's been a little bit of a back and forth with the live stream. Also, let me know if you hear the fan or the wind machine that's next to me over there. It's kind of hot where I'm at, so I just have that for some extra air. But yeah, it's been a while. Trying to get things settled between life, political life, etc. Before we continue on. So I said, let me just take a solid break from the live stream, refocus a couple of things, and get back to it this time around. There was always a discussion, of course, about doing like a season 2 kind of format where we start off with the same day, same time, but to reflect the fact that we are now in a new parliamentary year. So all of that's kind of happened since it was last year. As you know, we have our new parliamentary year, the year 2024-2025, and this is now going to run from September to September. And then so next year we'll do season 3, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the intention to have it structured like that. No coffee today, not because I'm taking a break, but because I literally have to re-up myself on that as well. So, okay, good. We can't hear the fan. Thanks, Gwendol. Hi, Gwendol. So yeah, I'm gonna just jump right into the last 2 weeks of Parliament. Last week, this week that it's just passed. We had some pretty critical meetings, and we settled one outstanding piece of business, and now we're still battling with another. So I'm gonna just dive into those topics. But first, to start off, a very important meeting, in my opinion. We had a meeting with the new State Secretary Szabo, from the Netherlands. He came on his Caribbean part of the kingdom tour, and the faction leaders of Parliament met him in a meeting on October 3rd, just to kind of talk about what his priorities are coming into this role. I did some background on him, of course. That used to be my job in Holland, market research, finding background on people. So I did, check him out. Comes from a professional background, a consulting background, very deep into tech and such. I used to work for Capgemini, which, if you ever met anyone that worked for Capgemini, you kind of know that that's where their passion lies. But he came down and we had a conversation with him about what our thoughts are with what we want to focus on as a parliament. Chair Lady of Parliament, MP Sarah Williams, kind of took the lead on that. She explained that, our focus was going to be, of course, on the democratic deficit, which has been a topic of discussion the needle has kind of moved, as there's now a dispute regulation draft from Aruba that's being pushed. It's being supported by Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin. So that's on its trajectory now towards becoming a kingdom law. But of course, the pending Kingdom Conference, we were supposed to have one in March, then that got pushed, then to nowhere, actually. It just got postponed. So we don't have a date. So we did discuss with him, what would be the possibility of setting that up, at least for if not this year, because we only have about 2 months left in the year, for next year after Curaçao's elections, which I believe are in March. And Gwenda will correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so we talked about that. As a faction leader for PFP, I did, we kind of do like a little round the table kind of chat. I did inform the state secretary that our priority, kind of remains in line with what he said is his focus for the islands, economic diversification and economic resilience. And we talked about that, and I said, we've always felt as a faction that economic diversification can only come through education, so that we would want to know what are the possibilities of getting support from BZK, so Interior Affairs, Interior Relations, for that. So developing, again, our STEAM skills in our schools, technical support to map out that curriculum and the deployment of said curriculum. So we had that conversation, and it was positive. I have to say the state secretary responded positively. Education is also important to him, which is good to hear. So I'm looking forward to what that could yield in terms of support for St. Martin. And he said, his focus is on making sure that we are able to do things on our own and build up that capacity for that. So following that meeting, I think they were going straight back to the Netherlands. Yes. So we were like their last stop, kind of. And then the time continued, and then we get into the next big topic, which is the big ticket item that was handled, as I mentioned, which is of course, ENNIA. So the ENNIA solution, which is the original solution plus the addendum from the Minister of Finance, the current Minister of Finance, Melissa Gumbs, was voted on, and it passed in our parliament. And questions are still coming to me about, well, what does this mean, etc. It is a considerable amount of money, but I want to focus on what exactly, how we got here and why we have to pay. And something that I said in the closed door meeting that we had, which was a technical briefing with the civil servants from the Ministry of Finance. And I'm not going to share what they told us, what they shared with us, because that is a lot of it was confidential. But I'll say what I said in that meeting, since I can. What I said in that meeting is I would want everyone to set aside the emotional component that is Mullet Bay, and let's look at what a regulatory body is supposed to do, how the central bank as a regulatory body failed in their supervisory role and purpose when it came to ENNIA, how they failed in the past, which has led to serious issues financial-wise in the past, whether it was some were resolved, some were not. And the fact that if you take Mullet out of the equation, you realize that it doesn't matter who this was, we would have ended up in a similar situation with such a massive supervisory failure. And that's what I said in the technical briefing that was closed door. I said, take Mullet out and think about, close your eyes and replace ENNIA with Nagico, with Guardian, with any of these insurers that are regulated under that umbrella, because that is the role that they have. It's kind of like if the MOT were to fail to catch suspicious transactions, ultimately someone has to pay the price for that. And when you look at how bailouts work elsewhere, the most knowledgeable, I think the most well-known ones that we have as an example for us in Martin, especially considering our proximity to the US and the fact that a lot of our news is US news. You think about the bailouts of the banks after the housing crisis, where they were giving out bad mortgages, where all of the ratings agencies, S&P, etc., they failed in their responsibility to kind of, hey, now, you're messing up, giving little warnings and such to those financial institutions. All of that failure led to what? A government bailout. That is the responsibility you take on when you have these entities, you have these agencies. And what I said specifically in the closed door meeting is that ownership equals responsibility. We here like to own things, and I've said it publicly as well on radio. We like to own things because yeah, it's ours and it's a sense of pride, but it also means we're responsible for it. When you own a car, you own a home, you're responsible for that car and that home. You're responsible for keeping it neat, you're responsible for getting it washed, cleaning it, painting it, maintaining your yard, all of that is part of your personal responsibility when you own something. And the same is true when you are a country and you own things. You're responsible. And with regards to Mullet Bay, I think there is definitely an emotional component about it. Look, for me too, like I've told people, look, 1995, in August that year, my cousins came down, my grandparents were celebrating, I think their 42nd wedding anniversary, and 42nd, 45th, one of them. And they came down for that. And we were staying at Mullet Bay, we had rooms, we were playing, we were swimming, we were jumping. It was a fun time. And then a month later, that was it. I have multiple memories of Mullet Bay like that. But ultimately, after Hurricane Lewis on September 5th, 1995, that's all I have are memories, just like everyone else from that time. And you have a whole couple generations now that don't really know or remember that Mullet Bay. Anybody born after that, you're kind of clueless about it. So there is the emotional component there for me as well. And I say that because when I try to explain why we have to clear that from our minds, is that Mullet Bay, a lot of the questions I get is, oh, but I thought Mullet Bay was government owned. I'm like, it's not. Mullet Bay at no point in time has been owned by government. It has always been private land. The beach, as former MP Peterson has explained several times, has always belonged to the country, as our beaches are public. So the beach is one part of it. That is ours, if you talk about ownership. But after that, golf course, etc., the land where the old convention center was, if you're old enough to remember that convention center, you know that it was a lovely space for performances, lectures and stuff like that. All of that is private, and it's owned by Sun Resorts, and Sun Resorts was a child company of the overall parent, and ENNIA was their direct parent. That subsidiary now, that child company, has two managing directors that have been charged by the central bank to find a solution for Mullet Bay, which includes selling it. And as private land, it can be sold. What the addendum from the current Minister of Finance has done is secure us the right of making a matching bid. Now, will we be able to do that? I'm not certain. We do not have the funding for that right now. So there is a large possibility that Mullet Bay will be sold, and any portion of it that is sold will go towards the debt that exists for the policyholders, and that will, bring down our fiscal responsibility towards ENNIA. But ultimately, I too do not want to see Mullet Bay fall into the hands of persons that are going to turn it into a concrete jungle. One of the things that was good about the property that was there before, as in the resort, is that it still gave you that feel of you're here on an island. You were driving around with bungalows. It was just units. And it was kind of like the Galleon in that regard, the Galleon Hotel, which is, again, I'm aging myself, but yeah. But you had those little units, and it was still green spaces, and it was still beautiful and pristinely kept and such. So that ultimately is what I think many of us would want to see it return to, not no high-rise kind of thing, because it doesn't look nice, to be honest. But modern, bungalow situations. But of course, that's not up to me. It is, however, possible to provide zoning regulations and laws that can protect some of those green spaces a bit better. And that's something that I hope when those particular pieces of legislation come to Parliament, that all of the Mau champions who have so much to say about Mullet Bay are willing to vote for them. Because that ultimately is also something that I think we all need to monitor. People can talk about this, that, what they did, what they thought they did, what they tried to do, what they started, but didn't actually start or finish or even get to the midpoint. But ultimately, what are you going to do now that you're in a role where you may not be the decision maker, but you have still a significant role to play in how that goes? Some of the questions I've seen about ENNIA are how are policyholders determined. I'll be very simple. I have a pension from when I lived in the Netherlands, Switzerland, right? I'm not paying into it anymore, of course, but it's there for the years that I worked in the Netherlands and racked up whatever I racked up. When I hit the retirement age of the Netherlands, I can take that out. The funny thing is, I started that pension over there, so I count for there. So my pension is governed by the laws of the Netherlands, that particular pension. Here, you open a pension here, let's say ENNIA, for example. And I've seen the comments of persons that, to my opinion, they don't really understand. And it's fine, that, oh, we're being made to pay just because there's a branch here. Okay. But it's not about a branch of a company. What it is about goes back to what I said earlier, which is your fiduciary. Well, you want to say fiduciary, it's an expensive word to say. Your responsibility for the ownership of the central bank that you own. Now, you may have a percentage differential in that ownership share, that ownership split, which is true. We do not own as much of it as Curacao does. However, we do own part of it. The same way that the central bank can speak to and report to and inform with the Minister of Finance of Curacao is the same way they can do with our local Minister of Finance. So it's a little disingenuous to say that we're paying for a company that we had a branch of. None of that actually makes sense. So once again, you're paying for that financial responsibility that you bear when you want to own things. And later on, we'll talk about something else that we own that we're now going to find ourselves being responsible for. So that's basically what that boils down to. Also, people ask, well, why? Oh, so back to the policyholders. So if you start your policy here and you decide, I want to move to Bonaire, I want to retire in Saba, station's looking really nice, and I'd like to take advantage of, their agricultural projects and such in my old age, you can move there, but you are still a St. Martin policyholder. That's the jurisdiction that you started your policy in. That is how you're determined. If you open your policy here, you move to Suriname, you're a St. Martin policyholder. So that's basically how that's broken down. And your administration remains here in St. Martin. So that also is part of it, to be clear. I was trying to see if I had the addendum downloaded so I can go through it. Yes, I do. Do I? Let me see. Yes. So ultimately, that is what that means when it comes to who's a policyholder, who's not a policyholder. And one thing that I found was interesting, and it gets very technical, is the split now to the peak facility. Previously, the peak facility was a joint peak facility, and now it's we have our own peak facility. Curacao has their own, and so we're responsible for that, what we take out of it, etc. In the previous construction, we would have been responsible. We would have been responsible if Curacao took out and if we took out. Curacao would have been responsible if they took out and if we took out. I think in this particular instance, the split of responsibility is critical. And I thought that that was an interesting adjustment from the Minister of Finance that she managed to negotiate. So yeah, that is on the policy side. And then another question I get a lot is, why don't we make Ansari pay? Well, we're trying. But I think people also have to bear in mind that as that legal battle continues, the countries, essentially, you're paying the cost of those court cases and those fees. So there's the question of how long do you want to keep going? It's easy to say make him pay. There's a court ruling that said he should, but the right to appeal is for everyone. And here we are. So I think personally, I might have handled it differently. I would have probably tried to stretch the legal arm of even the United States over it, because there's documentation that proves that Ansari has also played a role in political donations in the United States to the Trump campaign and so forth. There's also a lot of questionable things that could have probably gone through there if the money had been funneled around. So I don't know. I'm not the prosecutor. So I'm not sure what is at their disposal, but I would have, yeah, tried to unleash whatever I have legally available to me as an instrument then to go forward with that. So hopefully those cases, the previous Minister of Finance told us that those court cases were continuing. There's still, legal proceedings occurring. I'm hoping that they do yield something. And I would also say, and I've said it before, that persons locally that had a hand in this or that are found as part and parcel of this whole problem should also kind of find it within themselves to do the right thing, and pay back whatever you can pay back, ultimately. So yeah. And then we continued after the ENNIA meeting. We had the Central Committee meeting to handle the 2024 budget amendment. Now, this budget amendment takes into consideration some statements that the CFT made, the negative advice that they provided on the budget that was passed in March. The CFT also shared you know, our concerns. So they shared it in a closed door meeting with us. But what I found funny in that closed door meeting, and then of course now that it's out there by the Minister of Finance, I can talk about it. In that closed door meeting, they shared the fact that they had advised and suggested not to put the revenue projections for the sale of Winair shares and the tourist tax into the budget as income, mainly because nothing was really there. So I've talked about this before on the live stream, so I'm not gonna belabor the point, but ultimately those are the two things that have to be taken out that have now contributed to what looks like a budget cut, because you're not anticipating that revenue. Winair, the sale is no longer going through for the shares of Winair. Whether that was something that was decided by the government or by Winair, I'm not sure. And then the tourist tax revenue, the legislation is currently with the Social Economic Council that was inactive for the large part of that last term. And now that is going to be sorted out, submitted to government, and then from there, that legislation will hopefully continue on along its trajectory, taking into account the advice received from the SARE and from the other advisory councils, the Council of Advice and such. So those had to be taken out. And then you also see heavy cuts across ministries, in particular in budgeted vacancies that have been sitting on the budget. And this is something that MP Weaver had brought up in March. They're sitting on the budget, but they're not actually being filled. So it makes everything a little lopsided. The most notable addition to the budget amendment is, of course, a capex loan of 75 million guilders to purchase 3 generators for GEBE to bring us back to regular capacity. So I have mixed feelings about this, and I've shared this as well with the Prime Minister, both privately and publicly, in that meeting as well. I don't have an issue with getting these generators for GEBE, but this is my concern. And this is why I said that for me, at the same time that the 2-year span, because when you commission a generator, the big generators, it takes about 2 years for that commission to be completed. Now, my concern is this. We are a people that love to get comfortable when things go back to normal. We've done it after every hurricane. We did it after COVID. So to this day, when people are like, oh, I had such a terrible flu, I'm like, you probably had COVID because we're not masking. Fine. It's not as bad as the certain states in the US, but ultimately, you still have to bear in mind that, yeah, this thing is still around. And we get very relaxed. And my concern, and I said this to the PM in the GEBE meeting, not in the budget meeting, in the GEBE meeting, is that my concern is that we get comfortable and then GEBE is let off the hook once again for not even taking a baby's crawl forward towards renewable energy. That's really it. It's been part of their concession now for quite some time, 2% renewable energy. We're not even at 0.0000005%. So you have that situation where it's like, do we allow them to go back into this comfort zone? GEBE, the situation right now is a result of decades of mismanagement, political interference, tactical delays on critical decisions, including the purchasing of new engines. And this has never stopped. It's never stopped. And I think that this loan to purchase these generators, which we know the cost of the generators, at the end of the day, majority of what we have gotten anew has been from Wärtsilä. And those generators are about 12 to 14 million a piece dollars. So it tracks the amount. But yeah, I think that it should be a loan that comes with a caveat provided by our government, which is that while these generators are being commissioned to bring us back to our capacity, because that's what you see happening still. We're still not at capacity. The rented generators from So Energy are contributing to, bring up our capacity a bit, but we're entering high season. What I asked in the GEBE meeting, which I'm going to cross cover that here because the Prime Minister also kind of answered some questions from GEBE, not from me, but from others in the budget meeting. But basically what I said was I anticipate that we're going to need these rented generators from So Energy, as well as the additional generators that are coming in from CMEC. Because if I look at it where we're at, even if they bring up 19, 20, and now 18, which is what had the issue last night with their what did they say? Their turbocharger? Anyway, that had an issue last night, which has led to the load shedding that we've had. Sorry, I had limited sleep. GEBE went 5 a.m. by me, came back 7 a.m. Went again at 9:30, came back at literally about almost 3 hours later. So yeah, I want to also just make it clear that I think that we're going to need to continue renting those generators, and that I really need GEBE to again explain to me, like I'm a 5-year-old, how they're going to absorb that cost and not pass it on to us, because it already feels like it's being passed on to us, as many of you have shared. So yeah, that's definitely something that we have to monitor. But this loan, the way that the Prime Minister has explained it, the way that I understand it, it's going to go towards getting these generators to bring us back to regular capacity. But at the same time, GEBE has to seriously start, in my opinion, looking at how you transition a percentage to renewable energy. If not, maybe we have to open up that concession a bit and let other companies be allowed to do what they need to do to help transition persons who can over to solar solutions or otherwise. Because yeah, I'm very concerned as we tick closer to high season, and we don't want to see what happened during the summer happen when it's high season. I'd say that was a blessing that it happened during the summer, because I can't imagine that happening in December. So knock on wood, it's not going to impact us, and the generators that are rented and leased to own are going to keep us going to where it has to go. So further in that budget amendment debate, so there were a couple comments made regarding development and a tax holiday that was issued to a developer. And even though PFP's name wasn't called, I kind of felt like it was actually towards us, because it was said by MP Irion that this party has said that they don't support development and there's overdevelopment. So why would they support a tax holiday now for a developer, especially in Ahoy and such? And I had to smile because I was like, that's adorable. Adorable in the sense of we've never, and I had to go back and check. I went and I checked my manifesto. I went and I typed in my name in Google along with the words tax holiday, etc. And we've never actually spoken out against tax holidays. We have spoken out against overdevelopment. And the reality is we are overdeveloped. And we're overdeveloped in an unsustainable manner and without there being corporate social responsibility enacted upon foreign developers or local developers, because that's also an issue when it comes to overdevelopment. It's not just foreign developers that are guilty of that. Ultimately, what we've always spoken out about is that somehow, miraculously, over the last 4 years, middle-class St. Martiners, regular people going about their day jobs, have been unable to get building permits to do things for their homes, whether it's build a garage, put on a roof, add a room, a floor, etc. And what we have shared, we've discovered, is that you have big developments that receive little to no kind of evaluation in terms of their impact to infrastructure, environment, etc. And those permits have been signed off in under 3 months. That's cute to say that, we spoke out against tax holiday. And let me explain why I've never spoken out against a tax holiday. As someone who's worked in tourism, I know how tax holidays can be leveraged to have foreign and local developers contribute to social projects. Legislative change may be necessary to make that part of our overall investment approach and strategy as a country, which, hopefully with 4 years in government, we will focus on accomplishing. But to say that you should say absolutely no tax holidays, I think it can be counterproductive. If you know what you want to see happen in your country, and you know that these are the areas that you face, especially fiscal challenges in, then you, as a knowledgeable Minister of Finance, Prime Minister, Minister of RAMI, etc., should look to leverage tax holidays to be able to contribute to social projects such as the development of green spaces, the development of your infrastructure, proper drainage in the areas where these developments take place, proper street lighting, proper road management, proper development of your schools, your university. Those are things that you can do that may, as the Minister of Finance shared on the floor in the budget amendment meeting, require legislative change. Because right now, how those discussions tend to happen is that persons, drive over the hill and have a little meeting over some steaks, maybe some cigars. I don't know, I don't smoke. And they have a discussion verbally. And you can tell me anything that you discuss there. I'd like to see meetings like that happen with minutes, so that I can prove that that's the discussion that was had and that is how we're going to move forward. So yeah, I really don't believe what was said about the discussion with the tax holiday was to give, panels or whatever. I don't believe that any further that I can throw it. So I think the focus for us as this coalition, as this government, has to be that if we want to begin holding and deploying the type of corporate social responsibility that we demand from ourselves and from our local companies and developers, we need to also demand it from foreign developers. And so that's my 2 cents on that. So it was close, it was cute, but no cigar, because I don't smoke. Aside from those updates from Parliament, the budget amendment debate continues on Tuesday, where we will have the Minister of Finance returning. So who's returning, who already took new questions and is coming back to answer those, are the Minister of Finance, the Minister of RAMI, the Minister of VSA, and the Prime Minister. And then who's coming to give new answers? New answers to the questions they first received last week, Thursday, are the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Justice and Acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports. So looking forward to those questions as those answers as they come to us Tuesday. I believe that meeting starts at 2 p.m. Yep. That meeting starts at about 2 p.m. And then we will, of course, continue with the budget amendment discussion. I also want to note that this budget amendment is critical, not just for the GEBE loan, but for the continuation and continuity of the UNOPS project. So I want everybody to pay careful attention to the type of delay tactics brought about by the persons that were responsible for this UNOPS project coming about, because that's also part of my confusion with the ENNIA vote. That, you vote against something that your signature is on is a little strange to me. And then now you have this UNOPS prison project, and to continue that financing, this budget amendment does have to be passed rather soon. So I'm hoping that there is going to be no shenaniganry when it comes to the public handling of this particular amendment. Little update on the screening process. People keep asking me, so I'm just going to update it here, even though I'm not the formateur. The process is ongoing. I want everybody to bear in mind that, the security service is part of it, and they do cast a wide net. So I think if you've ever lived abroad or worked anywhere else in the world, they also try to retrieve information from there. I have lived, as you may know, in both the United States and in the Netherlands. I'm uncertain how far back they go, I lived in the US a solid amount of time ago. So I think, I don't think they will go that far back, but definitely to the Netherlands is someplace that they would look. And I think, they have to do that process for everybody again as well. So yes, then some local news. As you know, the road resurfacing project has started back. We also recently had some very unfortunate and tragic incidents occur over this weekend. It was a very rough weekend, for several families. In particular, the family of the young lady who took her own life on Friday, who is part of my extended family as well. And I want to issue those deep condolences to her immediate family and extended family. Mental health is something that we talk about a lot, but we rarely talk about it in terms of our kids, no matter how old they are. And that is something that, is also a bit of a taboo. Many times I hear parents say, well, I even hear just adults say, what do kids have to be depressed about? And I think that if you were to sit and have a conversation with our young people, that you would hear that there's quite a lot that they're dealing with in terms of strain, in terms of struggle, in terms of having to find themselves be the adult in their house, which is definitely a very powerful strain on them, and not being able to have the chance to be kids. So, with that, I think we all need to take ourselves out of our comfort zone a bit and have those conversations. A lot of times when I hear adults say, what do kids have to be depressed about? I recognize that maybe they themselves don't allow themselves to feel their own possible depression and mental health struggles. And that's important if you're gonna move forward in this discussion about mental health as a whole, and how we can begin addressing it and making sure that we all are better off with it. So definitely my heart goes out to her and her loved ones. And then of course Saturday morning, the very tragic loss of Mr. Michael Brown, who was the newly started department head of permits at the Ministry of Rami, who I know had all the right intentions, and him and his partner tragically lost their life in a motorcycle accident in the early hours of Saturday morning. So as well, my condolences going out to the entire Brown family on his on that loss, and as well the condolences to his partner's family and to St. Dominic High School. I recently I learned as well that she was the new visual arts teacher, and to the students as well. Much strength. That also definitely a blow for continuity, for mental health, for comfort and safety in the classroom. So that's definitely something that is very sad for me to hear. And I wish everybody much strength through this incredibly difficult time that I can't even imagine. And that was essentially our very sad local weekend, coupled with the loss of life. We had the loss of, I would say, environmental life, with the cutting down of the white mangroves at the bird watching point. And I know that it was done by some taxi drivers, I think, and they apologized, but I don't know, man. I really hope that they take the time to learn from the Nature Foundation about the value of those, of that flora and fauna, and, from an environmental perspective, and that they also take the time to learn it, to be able to tell it to their passengers. That's all part of tourism education, and how we can develop our tourism product with the knowledge that we impart to visitors. So also that that everybody is mindful of that. In regional news, not necessarily news per se. I mean, it was announced in February that the University of West Indies Caveville campus was going to launch a Bachelor of Business Administration in Aviation Management and a BBA in Aviation Management with commercial pilot license. I just want to take the opportunity to big up Dennis McCall, aviation flyboy, who's going to be an adjunct lecturer remote for that particular program. So congratulations to him and to UE as well on this momentous occasion of the launch of this degree program. In international news, we all saw Hurricanes Helene and Milton tear through Tampa to Florida, the Panhandle. A lot of damage, a lot of loss of life, loss of materials, and the season isn't over. So I want to take us into my usual closing, which is we're still in hurricane season. We have a month and a few days to go. There is a wave in the Atlantic that looks like she's going to hit a bit of a little southward drop and then gradual west-northwestward motion, and is going to be approaching as a 40% chance of development over the next 7 days. So I would urge everyone to continue to monitor the Atlantic. You can always do like me if you want. As soon as you get up and after you've checked your WhatsApp and maybe your Facebook or your Instagram, you can go to nac.noaa.gov and check the tropical weather outlook. Every time I hop on and I see there are no tropical cyclones at this moment, I get very happy, very excited. But lately it's been one after the other, and we are still not out of the woods. So again, I urge everyone to stay vigilant. You know, it does feel like forever. I feel like we have gone through 3 hurricane seasons right now. The nail biting of waiting and seeing, you know, is something coming to us? Is it going to just boomerang, you know, back to Europe, like Kirk and the rest of them did? But nevertheless, keep your hurricane kits in order, your bottled water, your canned food and non-perishables, at least 2 changes of clothes, so underwear, shirt, and pants. The live stream, as I said, will be getting back into the groove. So next Sunday we will be here. The one Sunday that I won't be here will be the 27th of October, because I will be attending a dear friend's wedding. So very much looking forward to that as well. But next week I'll be here. And next week I'll have a nice cool update, because next week Saturday, all weather holding strong. I will be accompanying Nature Foundation out on the water with their rangers. So definitely look forward to that. And I might have some cool pics that I'll throw up on my social media and such of that. So looking forward to that as well, and getting back to you guys on a weekly basis. Next time, definitely with coffee, because I feel myself drooping. Until then, don't forget to subscribe to the PFP channel to be notified of new videos. Follow our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and our WhatsApp community is still there, and you can join that for all PFP updates. And you won't even have to follow the Facebook and Instagram after that, but still follow it, because we like the count. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you, Gwendol, Mishnella, Eugene. Good evening to everyone that tuned in. You can catch this on the replay if you missed it, and I will see you guys next week. And in advance, have a wonderful week. To everyone, tomorrow is, of course, the official celebration of Constitution Day. There is a 8 a.m. service that I will be attending with my colleagues, and then at 6 p.m. there is a cultural manifestation, I believe at the Cultural Center. I'm not really sure. I gotta check. But there are things happening, so pay attention to the channels that distribute these flyers and such. And yeah, I hope to see folks come out tomorrow in their cool shirts to celebrate our Constitution Day, and we'll have a little reflection about that maybe next week on the live stream, since I didn't get a chance to actually reflect on much with budget amendment and everything happening. So thank you again, and I will see you next week. Have a wonderful rest of the Sunday evening.